What's going on, Washington Commanders Nation? It's your boy Rio Robinson, back with the latest and greatest on the Rambling with Rio YouTube channel, where we ramble about the Washington Commanders. What's next for the team? We are about less than a month away from the new league year kicking off, free agency, a couple weeks away from the NFL scouting combine, and Washington has to keep building this thing to be a beast. We don't want to see a regression in 2025. What's next for the Washington Commanders? Let's talk about it. What's going on, y'all? I'm still waiting for my brother Lake to kick in this thing in the off season. I think we're going to do it live whenever he comes on the show so it can be more interactive. So it's going to be the typical weekly conversation between me and Lake, but from a live standpoint. But how y'all feeling out there right now? We've reached the deadest part of the dead zone, the start of the off season, where players can get traded or they can agree to terms and shit like that. All the coaches and GMs have been hired, but we can't see real fireworks or moves being start to be made anytime soon. What up, man? What up, man? Waiting on Lake right now. My boy Lake running on CP time. What's good? What's good? What's good? I'm almost back. I'm almost at 100% again, bro. That flu running rampant out here in Northern Virginia, man. It's running rampant out here. How y'all doing right now? You know, we're going to have to hear from Eagles fans for a whole year until someone dethrones them. And when it's from someone close to home, like a team in the division, you just got to take it. You just got to take it at this point, man. I'm starving for it too. Whole bunch of what ifing taking place. It's a fact. It's a fact. It's a fact. What up? What up? What up? What up? What's going on, man? Yeah, I'm more back to myself. My voice got a little clarity to it. No unnecessary Ricolas in Hall's cough drops needed at this time being. I'm left-handed, but I'm keeping my hand down. What up with y'all, man? What up with y'all? Before Lake get in here, Washington has been linked to both Cooper Kupp and Deebo Samuel. And I have an opinion that differs from most on this topic. I would like to know what y'all think. I would rather not trade draft capital for either Deebo Samuel or Cooper Kupp, but if they were acquired, I would rather it be they were released by their team or at most a day 3 pick. I'm honestly, I would go elsewhere at the receiver position. Deebo Samuel, he gives you the Swiss Army knife type versatility, but I don't think he has had that productive of a career. He has one season in his career up to this point of over 900 yards. He had one like 1,400 yard season, and then it's a bunch of all right number 2 target type production. But he does give you a skill set. But he didn't even look in shape to me last year. A lot of injury reportness, and he didn't look like he was in the greatest shape. So I'm sitting there like, why? I would rather pay for a number 2 in free agency. Not even like a sexy name than to do that. Cooper Kupp, if Cooper Kupp was still who he was in 2021, or at least like 75% of who he was in 2021, sure. I'm not interested in trading draft capital for either of these players. And I got fans saying, oh, Rio, you're crazy. We desperately need an upgrade. But I don't think we're that desperate that we need to go pay capital for declining guys. I think both guys are on the declining side of their career. It's definitely not ascending. Cooper Kupp's body's been breaking down. His release package off the line has gotten nasty. Cooper Kupp used to win at the line all the time. Cooper Kupp looks like he's moving in slow motion, getting out of his breaks. I don't know, man. I don't know. I know the leadership he brings. I know the character he brings to a locker room, all that shit. But nah, I'm cool, bro. I'm cool on giving draft capital for players that are hitting the downside of their career. Louis T is big on DK Metcalf as a potential trade receiver number 2. What are my thoughts on DK? I like DK a lot, but I think a lot of the DK conversation is fan created. No one knows he's requesting a trade. With Garrett Wilson, with Rodgers leaving the Jets, Garrett Wilson's probably not request. All these trade requested receivers, they're all pipe dreams until they go Myles Garrett the situation and say, I want out of there. So I feel like right now the conversation is between Kupp and Debo because we've literally seen in wax that the teams are trying to trade them or they're requesting a trade. So Chris Godwin, I think Chris Godwin, you're going to catch him on a discount that you would never see him on. You'd catch him on a discount that you'd never see him on because he's coming off a big injury. He's coming off a big injury, not 30 years old yet. I believe he's going into his age 29 season, but you'd be able to catch him on a discount of sorts. My boy has been in the building now. We got to chop this thing up with my guy, NFL insider, and someone who covers the team very closely, my boy, Lake Jr. What up, Lake?
What's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm doing all right, man. It's the off season, man. I hate it.
Yeah, I mean, but you know what? This is when champions are built. Everything's done in the off season, and finally we have a competent, GM. And last year he did wonders in a short amount of time. So I'm excited to see what he's going to do. Adam Peters we're talking about. I'm excited to see what he can do having a full year of being able to assess every man in the building to see what they can do to close the gap with the Eagles.
It's kind of like the situation with our ownership group. You need a year on the job, a year to understand what you have in your building, who's going to be a part of this thing long term, who was just an experiment, just to see, like, what is the difference between last offseason and this one?
I mean, yeah. I mean, again, when Adam Peters was hired, his first task was to find a coach, and he spent a lot of time on that. So then when he and Dan Quinn, had to work together, they had to, find pieces quickly as far as who they were going to identify in the draft. And they probably already had guys that, on their radar from, if Adam Peters was still in San Francisco or or Dan Quinn was still in Dallas. So I'm sure some of the guys that they drafted were guys that both of them liked. They just came together on that. But then you had to think about how fast they had to put together free agent plan, as far as going out and getting those guys. So I'm not saying it was a rush job, but they didn't have a whole lot of time to put it all together and look at what they did. They had a really good first year, as far as their free agent acquisitions, played key roles in them getting to the NFC Championship game. And then, of course, their draft picks, obviously led by Jaden Daniels, was instrumental in them getting to the NFC Championship. But now, to have a full year of seeing what each person's weakness is, what their strengths are, as far as, what they need to do to upgrade this football team, I'm excited. This is the first full year that they've had. So this will be, in my opinion, their first real draft, their first real free agency off season, where they have everything circled, where whoever they bring in the building is who they wanted, and not maybe because of cap money and things of that nature. This is going to be a real deal this off season.
Hell yeah, because I always said year 2 was going to be when they start spending. Like, I noticed that most of the contracts they gave out were short-term contracts, I think year 2 was always going to be okay, we have a foundation set, let's go out and attack. But even last year, you wouldn't say they attacked, but they kind of did. They turned over the whole roster. We had 26 new players last season. So,
yeah,
as Adam Peters, do you necessarily change your approach? Because I'm pretty sure when you come into a job like this, you have a skeleton of how you're going to play out your 5 years of your contract. Does it change at all when the team is 60 minutes away from a damn Super Bowl in your first season?
Of course it changes. And I think it changes for the better. It changes because now not only do you have guys in the building that believe that you're successful, you have people around the league now that believe they're successful. Everyone that I've talked to since the Super Bowl it's been, man, Lake, you finally covering a legit winner, a contender. And I've been getting that quite a bit. And I'm like, damn, so it's not just in this area people think that. You look at some of the power rankings that are out right now for next year, for the 2025 season, and no draft picks have been taken yet. No free agent signings have been taken, but Washington right now, on average, is fifth or sixth on most people's power rankings for next year. It could go up if they go out and make a couple major moves as far as free agent signings, and they have another stellar draft. So that's where this team is around the league, and I can tell you this, Rio. All my Philly connections, all my folks up there, they literally think that Washington is, if not a threat to Philadelphia, they feel like that's the team that people in Philadelphia are looking at more than any other team in the NFC, and that starts because of number 5. I mean, he if you look at the train wreck of Philadelphia steamrolling through everyone in the playoffs, including Washington. I will say this though. Washington gave them a little bit of a challenge, except the wheels fell off because of the turnovers. We don't have to rehash that. But Jaden Daniels did his part in that football game. And I think that most people see what happened with Patrick Mahomes on Sunday, how they just dismantled him. I mean, he looked as probably as poor as I've seen Patrick Mahomes ever look. And it was because that pass rush was coming at him. Well, that's the same pass rush that was coming to Jaden Daniels, too. But Jaden Daniels could step up in the pocket and elude guys. Jaden Daniels was hitting everyone in stride. It wasn't his fault guys were putting the ball on the field. So I think if you look at that game and you look at what Washington did, why would you not feel comfortable and feel better if you're a Washington fan thinking that, man, we actually ran with Philly for a little bit. So if we can go out and get some of these, household names that might be needed along the defensive front, I think Washington has every reason to feel like it's going to be them in Philly again.
In the NFC. And it's crazy to me. Like I've I've been a fan of this team for quite some time. And this is the first time I can ever say unanimously in all the preseason power rankings, we're a top 10 team. We're top 6 on everything I've seen. Our quarterback is like 5th in MVP odds for next year, which I'm smashing the numbers on BetUS because Jaden, year 2, they talking about sophomore slumps. I'm talking about sophomore leaps. We about to Dan Marino this thing. I'm talking MVP candidate in year 2 type situation going forward. And you have to go all in on what you have here. This is the last season I predict that we're going to have Jaden, Cliff, Pritchard, Brian Johnson, like the secret's out on this staff. People want these guys on Washington staff. This may be the last year they are all fully assembled. So you got to put something out there this year.
Yeah, you do. And I think that they know that. I think that they feel that when you talk about windows, you can look at a team like Detroit. Their window's closing a little bit. Washington's window is still being pushed up. It's not even fully open. So, but it's open enough for them to crawl through there and be in a Super Bowl or be in an NFC Championship game again. I'm already saying right now, Philadelphia is the best team in football, and they proved that on Sunday. And we should be talking who's going through Philadelphia. Well, the conversation should be Washington. And again, I say that they know that they're within striking distance. Are they better than Philadelphia? No. Let's just be upfront about that. 1 through 53 talent wise, it's not even close. I mean, let's just be honest. But the talent that they have in that 1 through 53 is at some key positions, and it starts at quarterback. And then now they have their go-to receiver in Terry. If they can go out and get, a home run running back, if they can get a viable number 2, where they're not breaking the bank. I don't want them to break the bank for offense. I want them to break the bank for defense, if you're going to break the bank at all. So I think if you're Washington, they do have holes that they need to fill, but those holes aren't sinkholes. Those holes aren't, because they're terrible. It's literally, just you need to plug and play a couple of pieces that can help on both sides of the ball. And I think you're right back in Philadelphia again. I truly believe, Rio, I know it's early, but I do believe that that's going to be the NFC Championship game again. I truly believe that.
Running it back. Oh, that's
Yeah.
music to my ears, man, because that would mean we're back in that situation. I think there are so many people who are desperately wanting to call Washington a one-year wonder with
No,
the
no,
weak schedule.
no.
We have a much higher degree of difficulty schedule in 2025, and we're gonna have to show folks just how about it we actually are. But
I mean, do they? I mean, let me ask you this. Do they? I mean, yeah, you can look at it and say, okay, the schedule's tougher, okay? But the team that won the NFC North was who? Detroit. Washington went into Detroit and beat them down. The team that won the NFC East was who? They end up winning the Super Bowl. The Eagles. Washington beat them too last year. I don't care if Jalen Hurts was hurt or not. They beat them. So my point is, if you can beat the two best teams in the NFC from this past year with not having a full arsenal in doing so, what would make you think that they can't do it next year when they play both those teams, by the way, on the schedule? What would make you think that they can't do it again? I would liken to think that this is a football team that didn't catch lightning in a bottle. Their culture got them where they were. And now when they get the talent to go with the culture, it's going to be hell to pay. And I think that that's what's about to happen in 2025.
I agree, man. Prayers and condolences, Asia, for your mom passing away. I went through that at a young age. Y'all give me some prayers in the chat for Asia, man. I'm sorry to hear that, Ms. Robertson. But
Absolutely.
about going all in for 2025, it's going forward, because once you have the main ingredients on your rock, you have the GM, you got the front office. I mean, Lance Newmark may not even be here next year. He was already getting flirted with by other teams. You have to take advantage of this window that we're in right now. Jaden's rookie contract, you got to go all in. Just one more thing on the Super Bowl. We can just move on to how Washington moves forward in the offseason. What was the main takeaway of that dominant performance for you? Because I know what it was for me. They had Patrick Mahomes in the Matrix without sending extra rusher. They were doing it with 4 down linemen. To be able to have your scheme that proficient without sending extra rushers versus the best quarterback of this generation, I'm not trying to glaze, but that was one of the best performances I've seen.
That was the best defensive performance I've ever seen in the Super Bowl. And I know, I'm old enough to remember when the Bears did it in '86 with Buddy Ryan was a defensive coordinator. They carried him off the field as well with, with Mike Ditka. But the Patriots offense stunk, in that game. They were
Mahomes, they did it.
Yeah, exactly. This was done against the GOAT, the eventual GOAT. And they made him look pedestrian in doing so. He looked bad. He didn't look. You can't say, it was the offensive line for Kansas City was just terrible.
He didn't look like a starter.
He didn't. All of them struggled. I mean, and they just couldn't believe what was happening. And they, even coaching. I said this before. I thought Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo, they got out coached. They didn't attempt to run the football. And if you can't run the football and you become one dimensional with that defense front. They were pinning their ears back. Those guys were playing for stats in the Super Bowl. That's how bad it got. Guys were like, "Nah, let me get to them." That's how it was going. So, yeah, that stood out the most to me for sure. They didn't blitz one play in that Super Bowl. They didn't need to.
Josh Sweat was looking like Von Miller the year he played against Cam Newton in the Super Bowl. That was dominant. I remember the 2000 Ravens Super Bowl. I remember the Seattle Seahawks dogging the best offense ever, Denver Broncos, in the Super Bowl. But this is young, in his prime, best quarterback of this generation, Patrick Mahomes. This is a dynasty. This is a team coming off back-to-back Super Bowls, seeking the first three-peat in NFL history, and you made them look like they're picking top 3 in the draft next year.
Yeah, and in doing so, you might have to start mentioning Philly in that dynasty word. And the reason being is because the last 4 years, You think about it, they've been in 2 Super Bowls, they've won one, or the last 3 years, excuse me, they've won one Super Bowl, been in two. So they're right there with Kansas City as far as the two best teams in football. I truly believe that. But I think the difference is Kansas City has a very good defense, and honestly, if Kansas City's defense hadn't been on the field, I mean, you could be looking at a 60+ point game by the Eagles. Kansas City's defense did the best they could, but they were on the field the whole game because the Chiefs' offense, I don't even know if they crossed midfield but one time. Literally the whole
garbage time.
yeah, the whole game. So that's just sheer dominance, man. It was something, man. And I gotta quietly tell you, remember I predicted Philly was going to win the game. I thought it would be a lot closer, of course, but I had them winning the football game. And people like, man, you can't pick the Eagles. I'm like, man, I'm not tied to anybody. This is my job. But I'll say this. If you're Washington, you have to feel damn good about what you saw in that Super Bowl because they steamrolled, like you said, a dynasty. They steamrolled those guys. Mm-hmm. Even though they hung 55 on us in the and I say us because I covered the team and I was there. Even though they hung 55 on them. Look, man, it wasn't that bad. What I saw Sunday was bad. It was bad.
It was awful. It was awful. It was very non-competitive. The funniest thing about that game is, how they cut up highlight clips for each player. They put Patrick Mahomes highlights from the Super Bowl in the first play. The score is 37-0. His first play of his highlight reel is the score is 0-37. It's like, have some shame. Why don't you? But moving on, we do know what the measuring stick is, the litmus test, and who we're building to try to beat going forward. The whole entire league sees it. That's a team that dominated the postseason. Washington has been connected early in the process to two veteran wide receivers. And I'm not a fan of trading draft capital for these guys, but I'd like to know your opinion on it. Cooper Kupp, Deebo Samuel, what is your opinion of Washington being linked to these guys, and what would be your preference of those two?
Man, that's a good question, and I'm glad that you didn't start with T. Higgins because I don't want T. Higgins. We've said this before, and people get mad at me for saying it. I don't want someone that wants to be a number one here, thinking they're a number one, because they won't be. Whoever comes here, I don't care if it's Cooper Kupp, I don't care if it's Deebo Samuels. When they come here, they're going to be handed a yellow face mask. A yellow face mask and a green and red uniform. That's Robin. And they're going to be told that the guy that wears the black is over on the other side. That's Batman. So make sure you understand your role. You're going to be a valuable asset to the offense, a true guy that can make plays. But that's number one over there. And I think for Cooper Kupp or Deebo Samuels, I think both of them actually, ironically, would fit in really well with what Washington's trying to do. Clearly, Adam Peters has history with Deebo Samuels, and I don't think for Deebo you'd have to give up a lot. I think you could probably get a fourth or a fifth to get him. And if that's the case, if Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch and they go to Adam Peters and say, hey, we're good friends, we're boys, let's get this done. We'll take a fifth from you and we'll give you Deebo. I'm running and getting that done. That's an upgrade at your number two, and he's a Swiss Army knife, a guy that can do multiple things with the football. You can line him up in the backfield sometimes. If you're Cooper Kupp, again, when healthy, and you got to preface that for both these guys, when healthy, they're difference makers. Cooper Kupp is one of the best receivers of this generation, period, when you look at the numbers, but he does have a history of being injured and
body breaking down, man.
Exactly. And that's my only concern. I love Cooper Kupp and I actually, when healthy, I probably would go Cooper Kupp for this offense more so than Deebo, but I think under the circumstances, I think Deebo probably would be the better fit right now.
I think Deebo would be the better fit as well, and I also think that we're in on. I think we're in on Debo. I think
Oh
Adam
no, I
Peters,
do
that's
too.
his guy.
Yeah,
If you're gonna take one, give me the younger guy who I also feel like injuries. I don't feel like he was in great shape last year. There was some times in the season last year, Debo was out that thing looking like he was built like me. I was like, what we doing, Debo? But that whole 49ers roster lived on the injury report last year.
yeah.
And production wise, he's not a traditional like boundary starting outside receiver. He's the Curtis Samuel role that this offense missed last year. He's the
Yeah.
guy you're going to hand the ball to, give jet screens to, and throw it to. If you were to trade for Debo Samuel, he may be one of your second options, but I wouldn't call him the second receiver on the team if we were to do so.
That's fair. I think they would not be done. Via the draft, they would draft a wide receiver. Still might, even if they go out and sign two free agents. At receiver, I still think that they're going to try to upgrade that position. And let's face it, they still need that big target out there as well. They still need that big possession receiver. I think a guy like Noah Brown, I would bring him back because I thought he played well when he was healthy, so I might consider him. And obviously, you have Luke McCaffrey, who's younger. You have to ask yourself what you're going to do with the OG Jamison Crowder, who gave you quality special teams moments. So, De'Ami Brown, are you going to re-sign him? Probably not, but who's to say that they don't, So there's options that are out there. I know you and we talked about Garrett Wilson at one point.
Yeah, that ain't happening.
I just don't see how it can happen, and I don't think they're going to spend a lot of money on the offensive side of the ball if it's not in the trenches. I just think that they feel like some of these things can be addressed in the draft. There are a lot of receivers in this year's draft that are going to be really good football players. Right off the cup, they're going to be really good. And there's some guys with some size, so I think it might be something they take a look at via the draft too.
Yeah, I could see us trading a day 3 pick for Debo. I would prefer to go elsewhere, but I could see the team doing it. A day 3 pick, his cap hit this year is only $15 million and 17 million total, but like 15 million against the cap next year. He had a front loaded contract where it would look like 23.8 million a year, but it's down to 15 on the cap hit this year. So that's a
And they could restructure that too, by the way.
very friendly contract.
Yeah, I mean, and they could stretch it out. They could, bring them in and give them an extra year or two on the contract where it stretches the money out, so it's not as bad of a hit on that. But again, I agree with you, Rio, that I don't know if getting Debo Samuels, takes care of your true need for a number two. I don't know if he's your number two in the conventional way. He's, like I say, he's more one of those guys that they just line up all over the field. And it would be interesting to see culture wise and all those good things, how any of these guys come in, will they fit the culture that's in play? And it's, like I said, my 15th year, just finished it covering this team, and it was the best locker room I've ever been in, bar none. It wasn't even close. So you just don't want to disrupt that chemistry. I'm not saying Debo's a bad guy at all, because he's not. He's a good dude. But whoever you bring in, they have to understand that, as Terry McLaurin said it himself, it's a non-negotiable as far as fitting in.
And we need some speed on this offense. We need some speed, some explosion, and some guys that can do some things after the catch. So I do get it. So I wouldn't be mad if they go out and go get a Debo and a Darius Slayton, as long as Darius Slayton brings his hands to Washington when he comes, because there have been moments where that boy has a lot of concentration drops, but he's very productive over there. And I think you add a wide receiver at some point during the draft. But speaking on adding big on the defensive side of the ball, where do you stand in the conversation of Myles Garrett? Like, would you be all for it? Do you think Washington, they got too many holes to fill, or would you go all in on a top 2 defensive player in the league at 29 years old, adding it to the defense?
Man, I'm gonna go even further than that. Not only am I go all in on it, I'm all in on him and Max Crosby. And I know people think it sounds nuts to say that. Trust me when I tell you, both of those guys are in play. And, that gets you right over.
Do you say either or are you saying we'll get both of these guys?
Both.
I don't even know if that type of compensation exists, Lake.
Well, I mean, it could. I mean, you gotta think. You have all that cap money. You're gonna have to give up a player now. Don't get me wrong. And maybe I should have prefaced that and say that you're not just gonna get both of them in and that's it. But you can get both those guys and get rid of one of those tackles. And I think that one of those tackles could be used to get one of those guys. And I think for Cleveland, there's talk that they want 3 first rounders. They're not going to get 3 first rounders. They're not going to get that. The league has shown you over the years the biggest of the names, and he's one of them. They just don't do that anymore. So you could get him for. I would venture to say for Myles Garrett, you're parting ways with your 29th pick in this year's draft, first round. Yeah, plus exactly. So to me, let me throw it back at you. If you could give up the 29th overall pick in the first round and Daron Payne for Myles Garrett, do you do that?
Hell yeah, because I don't think that's enough for Myles Garrett. I don't think that's enough even at all. We're talking about the best or at
generational,
the second best defensive player in the entire league, and he's not 30 years old yet. There's not a price that you don't pay for a player like. That's why the Browns are not going to make this easy coming up off him.
Well, see, this is what I think they have to do here. They have to give up this year's first rounder. Okay, they have to give up next year's first round. And that's it. You give up those 2 first rounders for Myles Garrett, done, bang. And people are going to say, what are you talking about? You can't give up first rounders. Well, I want people to understand this isn't your uncle's Redskins or Commanders, okay? And I say your uncle's because if it was your father, you understand the way they did business as far as draft. So when I say that, they're not going to fleece Washington. And as far as the draft order, you have to understand this isn't a team that's going to be expecting to be picking the top 5 or top 10 ever again. They expect to be picking in the bottom of the rounds because they expect to be having playoff runs every year now with Jaden.
Round pick.
Absolutely. So that 29th pick really boils down to getting the best player on your board at that point. So now if you can part ways with the 29th pick this year, and who's to say next year you do what you think you're capable of by getting the Myles Garrett and having a pick that's 30 or greater, 30, 31, 32, yeah, that's almost like a no-brainer to part ways with those 2 picks to get a guy that's going to put you in position that you want. So hear me out on this. That's just the draft picks that brought in Myles Garrett. Now you still have all that cap money. Now you can go and entice, the Raiders to come up off something else, so it's doable. And I say that because you didn't part ways with one of those tackles yet. So maybe for Crosby, you part ways with a tackle and a second. And it could be this year's second, if that's the case. So it's this year's second and one of those Pro Bowl tackles for Max Crosby. You give up 2 first rounders for Myles Garrett.
Pro Bowl tackles? Where they at? Where they at? Like, where them Pro Bowl tackles you talking about?
Hey, listen, that's the way you're gonna have to advertise it. Yeah, you gotta throw some seasoning on it. That's the way. Look. That's the way you're gonna have to advertise it, man. And then in the 3rd round or something like that, or you like, I like this gentleman here, Benji, saying Travion Henderson. Now you get your home run threat back. I mean, listen. There's so many things this team can do with having this money, having the success that they had this past year, because guys are going to want to come here. You don't think Myles Garrett is really starting to say, man, this whole Commanders thing, the Cowboys are in the mix. Listen, I know the Eagles even talk about trying to get him. You don't want that. So you got to do what you got to do, man. And I think draft picks are capital to make things happen. And when you are a good football team, those draft picks don't mean as much as they used to. They just don't.
They do not. And appreciate you, Tizzy Bang, for the 4.99 super chat. Is Jair Wash any interest if he gets cut? I'm on Team Sanford still. I want Sanford still back in the slot. Appreciate you, my guy. I want him back
Yeah.
on the inside. Go get me like a Charvarius Ward or somebody to put on the outside opposite Marshawn Lattimore. I feel like Jair and Lattimore, that's a lot of the same, like where their career trajectories are headed with injuries in their play regressing a little bit. I'm cool on Jair Alexander. I wouldn't hate it, but I'm not. I'm cool. I think that's going to cost more than I would like
I
for it.
want Ward. I do. I think Ward. The history, obviously, with Adam Peters and the unfortunate, situation that he had this year, losing his child.
No.
He's talked openly about maybe needing a change of scenery just to not, excuse me, be in that setting and having PTSD and thinking about it all the time. So you think about from a football standpoint on the field, him being in Washington with Lattimore and moving Mikey into the slot, man. And then if you do have those monsters that we talked about on the edges now, yeesh, this thing could be up and running quickly.
Hell yeah. I would love to get one of those guys. I think both. I think that's selling a dream. And I'm like, I think Myles Garrett is fair game. Max Crosby gives me he's okay with losing Raider for life vibe. He gives me
He's
I'm
saying
not
all the
doing
right things, man. He don't want to be in. He don't want to be there.
I
That's
see Raider in
obvious.
his blood though. Like he just seemed like a Raider lifer to me, man. I don't know.
Listen. You that's a professional, and he's saying all the right things. It might generate more money for him to keep him. But the point is, he knows they're not going anywhere anytime soon. And when you see a guy like Jaden Daniels and all the success he had and how quickly things were turned around here and the culture that Dan Quinn has and Adam Peters' pedigree, people around the league are seeing this and players are seeing this. And Max Crosby, out of his own mouth, you can look at the quote. He said he doesn't want to go to a team that's already been in the Super Bowl or already won one. He wants to be a guy that's a missing piece that gets a team to the Super Bowl. That's called the Commanders. So, listen, man, you can dream big, and I think that when you have this kind of cap money and you have the draft capital and you have the success and you have a superstar in the making player that the league is going to do everything they can to make sure this guy lives in primetime football next year. Other players want that too. They know that their names are going to be in lights as well. So it's not as far-fetched to think that Washington could walk away with both those defensive ends. I'm telling you, man, we might be having this conversation in 2 months. And you're going to be like, man, you said that you thought this could happen. I believe it's in play. I really do.
Some shit like that happen. I'm putting everything I own on the lottery. You got to give me the number. I'm believing all six. Just let me know what the numbers are, late. That would be a dream come true type off season because not only are these guys phenomenal pass rushers, these are guys that play the run well. Washington's run defense, like that has to be near the top, if not the top obligation in the offseason. How the
Has
hell
to
do
be.
we stop the run? Because running backs was getting their shit off on this defense all last season. And we need help out there. And it's hard to have these conversations because it's like we prioritize the defensive line for so many years through two regimes, Chase Young, Montez Sweat, Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen, all those, oh my God, 4 first-round picks on the front line. It's the best line in the league. It just never materialized to be
Never
great.
saw it.
It
Yeah,
never became what people outside of this building and what people thought it was.
man, it got so bad, and even to an extent last year with John Allen before the injury and Deron Payne. You remember how many times we would hear somebody say, "Oh no, he had a sack," or "Oh no, man, he had a stop for in the backfield in the game." I'm like, why are we glorifying guys that are getting paid elite defensive tackle money to be average? or at times below average. So then when they make a play, it's like all of a sudden the light bulb came on. No, man, things happen like that. But that's what they're supposed to be doing every play. They're supposed to be difference makers. They're supposed to be what you see a 23-year-old Carter doing in Philadelphia. I mean, he's a man child right now. He hasn't even hit his best football, and he's already one or two as far as top defensive linemen in the league right now. That's what I'm talking about. I don't want players that are part-time players. I want guys that are always making a mark on the football field. Guys that if you look at Jaden, you can say it now. You can't say, no one in that locker room can say anymore to us in the media that, oh, well, I did this or I'm doing that. I did my assignment, need help over here, blah, blah, blah. Because I saw what a rookie did this year. And that rookie at times put this team on his back. And so there's no excuses for anybody else. If you're getting paid top dollar, I need top dollar performances from you. Simple as that.
Exactly. I'm looking at I'm not trying to compare these guys, but when you're getting paid on that level, you go look at the Dexter Lawrences and the Chris Joneses of the world. Chris Jones dominates on a line where he's the only dominant player. George Karlaftis and them aren't amazing edge rushers off the edge, but Chris Jones hold that unit down. They get double, triple, quadruple teamed, and they still find a way to wreck offensive performance. So you can keep throwing the laundry list, CVS receipt long list of excuses out there for these guys. We need more from them. So crystal ball, we get to week 1, 2025. Are Payne and Allen both on the roster? Because while I don't feel like I would have them both here going forward, I think they're both going to be here next year. What do you think?
I don't. I don't. I think one of them's gone. And I say that because Newton was Adam Peters' pick. And Newton flashed this year. There obviously needs to get a little stronger, get back in shape. But we all understand why all of those things didn't happen, because he was coming off foot surgery on both feet. So he was never fully healthy and ready. So, but he still showed you a high motor, was running guys downfield. I saw a lot of effort with that guy, and that's what he was at Illinois. He was an effort, high energy, high motor guy. But once he gets, back in shape and gets his technique, I think he's going to have a really strong second season. And I think he's the type of player that needs to be on the field. So, yeah, I think one of those guys is gone, Rio. I truly believe that. I mean, you're paying almost $75 million into both those players to be getting no production. So I just don't think it lends well for this team when you can go out and get 2 defensive tackles for that price of money for one, and maybe get the same results, if not better. So I think one of them's gone.
Okay. Is there a player that Washington has as an impending free agent that you think it would shock fans that they're not going to bring back? What you think?
I don't want to put, play Adam Peters here, but I think Dayami might be gone. I could possibly see that. Good guy, great locker room dude too. Was starting to come into his own. Yeah, he put the ball on the ground in the Philly game, and that was at a bad time to have your worst game. But the team collectively had their worst game of the season, so it wasn't just him. Yep. I think he might be one guy. The guy that I'm really interested to see free agent wise, what happens with him, is Jeremy Chin, and because I know a lot of teams want him. I know a lot of teams are going to make a run at him, and he might get a little bit more money, than expected, so to speak.
Still young.
He's still young, 26, 27. So, this was his second best year, in my opinion. I think his rookie campaign was uber strong for the Panthers. I think he finished second to Chase Young for Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year.
Right behind him, and it was actually
it was close.
He made it.
Yeah.
He should have won that, John.
Absolutely. So to me, this was his second best season, most meaningful season though. So, if you're Washington, do you overpay a little bit because other teams are going to take a look at him? So, and then he has to ask himself, does he want the money, or is it all about the money, or do you take a little bit of a little bit of a hit just to stay on a team that has Super Bowl aspirations, and you be a big part of that on defense. So I would say De'Ami Brown and probably Jeremy Chin on the other side of the ball.
Okay. My boy Hawk, what up, man? Appreciate you for the 9.99 super chat. What up, fellas? I'm a bargain shopper, and I believe Chase Young. That's a
No,
conversation some people want to have. With your GM caps on, could you see it
no,
happening? Lastly, what other players are you looking at? I am all the way good on Chase Young. Nope, not for me.
no. That's not gonna happen. That's just that's a burn bridge. So it's just not gonna happen. And I know a lot of people feel like and I'm kind of in the conversation that he wasn't equipped with the right coaching, when he was here, and it just let things go amok. But you've moved on from that, and there's a reason why this roster's been gutted and purged from anyone that was leftovers, and you understand what I mean by that.
Oh yeah.
They don't want anything. They don't want that. They just don't. They don't want that mentality. They don't want the accepting of the losing. They don't want that. And I had someone come at me and say, "Oh, but Terry's still part of that." No, Terry was drafted by Gruden. And so, yeah, he wasn't one of those draft picks. Trust me. And there's nothing about his game or attitude or demeanor that makes you think he fit in with that, because he didn't. So yeah, to answer your question on that, no, I think I'd pass hard on Chase.
I would pass very hard on Chase Young. I hope he gets another bag, all that. I don't let the U Street legend find his home elsewhere. He did have a much better year than his stats will tell it. He was a pressure demon for the Saints, and you know how he plays the run, but that is not a reunion I'm exactly welcome to here. Out of Washington's cornerback room, Benjamin St. Juice, Noah Igbenogany. Do you think either of those two guys are brought back here?
Well, I definitely don't think Benji's brought back at all. I think Noah definitely has a chance. Noah played okay. He played, I would probably, I think my grade for Noah this year was like a 77. That's not bad, but you need somebody to be in the 80s, man.
These get degrees, but we want better than that in our starting inside corner.
Absolutely, and I think Mikey's the guy that can do that. I just naturally think size wise, it's a better fit for Mikey. I know he wants to be on the outside, and he's proven that he can do that. So it's not like he's going to move to the slot and stay there the whole game. They'll move him around. But yeah, I do believe that Noah's definitely. I agree with Charles here. I agree that he's definitely a piece that can be a nickel guy. I'll give you some depth, for sure.
Mikey's backup on the inside. A free
Absolutely,
agent at corner,
absolutely.
Marshawn Lattimore on one side, Mikey in the slot, and Noah I on a very team-friendly cornerback 4 type deal. He could be like the new Wild Goose, Fields Castro, whoever you want to call it, that rounds out the cornerback room, and if we need him, but not to start. He should not be a priority free agent. I think a lot of these guys, we need to let them go test their market, and we bring them back if we don't find any upgrades at their position, but I don't think we should be prioritizing Noah Igbenogany, and we're definitely not signing back Benjamin St. Juice.
100% fact on everything you just said. I don't need to even go further.
Oh my God. I'm looking at the linebacker room. Frankie Louvu is telling folks that people are telling him they want to play for us. I feel two ways about that. I'm excited. I love that. Frankie Louvu, turn that down a little bit. We don't need no tampering allegations coming to Ashburn. We don't need to hear that you're actively recruiting players who aren't technically free agents left. But I love it, though. I love the excitement. Tell me that after pen to paper and after the offseason start. But it is exciting that Washington's a destination again. We're getting back to the old days.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with those guys saying that, because I hear it too. There's I mean, bro, it's so good right now. Former players who played here have reached out to me and said they want to get back to Loudoun County. Like they might want to move family back there and try to get somehow back in the building from coaching or interning, doing something. And because that's the buzz around the organization right now. So if they're saying those things, current players, of course, want to be part of a winner. And I do think that there's something to be said about getting a team over the hump. And I think, when they saw where Philadelphia ended up this year with the Super Bowl, I think that as a competitor, a guy like Myles Garrett, maybe a guy like Max Crosby or someone else, maybe a Debo Samuel or Cooper Cup, I think they feel like that they're close, man. Like this team needs me. They need me. They need me to come in and I can help get them over the hump. And that's what's gonna, translate around the league where you're gonna have agents calling now. I know for a fact Adam Peters' phone's been lit up.
Oh yeah.
There's no doubt about that. Now he gets a chance to sift through who he wants as opposed to who they have to take because there's no other options out there. No, this is different this year for Washington. They have mad options, and now they can pick the best of the bunch.
It feels so good. It's refreshing. I hated Super Bowl week because it wasn't us playing and I was salty about it. But seeing Jaden thrown everywhere, propped up like he's the next guy in this league, hearing our names in all these conversations. I'm watching NFL honors, and we're actually one of the main topics of the show. Best moment of the year, rookie of the year, and we're actually like we even are relevant enough to be a part of the opening monologue of the show. It feels good to see this team back relevant again.
It does, man. I mean, I remember these days when I was younger, when I was your age. I remember the days, man, and it was like this every year. It was always chatter about Washington, and if they didn't get to the Super Bowl, what did they have to do? Who did they have to go out and get? There was really no free agency at that time, so it was the same teams, and then your draft picks came in, but that was the talk. And think about the past 15, 20 years. The season was done before December rolled around. And then once the season was literally officially done, you there wasn't much to talk about. You just talked about who they could draft. That was the big deal. Who could they draft? Because we're going to be picking 5 or 6 or 7. It was always in that realm. So it was who could you draft? Well, now it's who can you get free agent wise to put this team in the Super Bowl? I mean, it's just a whole nother conversation. And let's face it, I don't think they're going to have a first round draft pick in the next couple years that's going to hit like Jaden hit, because Jaden was number 2 pick in the draft and he was a quarterback.
I don't think, yeah, you can't match that.
You can't. You'll never be able to match that. So that's why we keep saying that the 29th pick is expendable. It's expendable to get you what you need. Like literally, if it's not Myles Garrett, if it's not Max Crosby, it could be someone else. I mean, I think Hendrickson for Cincinnati. I feel like he's going to still be there. They're probably going to pay him, but that's another guy you could take a look at, to see. Yeah, what I'm saying, you need somebody that's going to really be able to get after that quarterback. So now those first round draft picks are expendable, and I just think it's just a nice story because on top of all of that, you have a person in the building that knows what the heck he's doing. His talent evaluation is on point. So now you have to feel even better about the decisions that are going to be made. No knee-jerk reaction to decisions and no rush jobs, none of that stuff. This is all set up for them to be a bully for the foreseeable future. And losing to Philadelphia the way they did, I think it sped up the process now. So now they know they have to make a splash to get what they need.
Yep, and it's not a blind splash because I see a lot of people like, oh, going to get Myles Garrett would be a Dan Snyder. Like, no,
no,
the hell it would not. We never got he's not some 37-year-old over the hill used to be the best edge rusher in the league. The dude won Defensive Player of the Year last year and was the runner-up for that joint this year. Like, what are we talking about? This 29-year-old absolute dog hasn't had less than 10 sacks since his rookie season and is stout against the run as well. That Dan Snyder
never really been in the playoffs either, by the way, Rio. So that makes him even more hungry to get somewhere he's never been. So, it's not like when Dion came here, he had already won multiple Super Bowls and been an MVP on defense. Nah, man, this is Myles Garrett, who He sees what Von Miller has done, what Khalil Mack did. They went somewhere else and won Super Bowls, and they were just parts of the puzzle. This guy still can come here and be the centerpiece on the defense overnight,
For
and put them
years.
over,
For
yeah, for
years.
years, right,
Yep.
and put them over the top. So no, 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 no. This is definitely not a Dan Snyder move. I mean, that's almost blasphemous to even say that.
For all the people who are afraid to go make that move, watch how Howie Roseman work if we don't want to go pony up the coin for him.
You don't want that. If he ends up in Philadelphia, it's a wrap. Simple as that. It's a wrap.
Philly gonna lose a couple pieces in free agency. People gonna start saying, "Oh my God, their championship rock. They lost Josh Sweat," and then Howie Roseman gonna say, "All right, bet," and go get Miles Garrett, and we're all gonna cry and throw up about it.
Yeah, it's Miles Garrett or Max Crosby. So that's why I'm saying you better get both them in burgundy and gold, because one of them, if they don't, is going to end up in Philly. Because I think we all know the Sweat's probably going to be leaving Philadelphia.
Somebody gotta get a bag. Somebody
Yeah,
gotta
he's
give him a bag.
he's about to get broke off for sure. And there's a lot of people out there that need pass rushers. I mean, could he end up here? That's a whole nother story. So yeah, but whoever when he leaves, they're going to do a player to go out and get someone to replace him that could even be an upgrade, which is scary.
Very scary. What up, Dejan? My guy for the 4.99 super chat. He says, "Sup, fellas. So you guys 100% confident going forward with Quan Martin at safety? He seems to be poor at tackling. Can we upgrade that position?" I think our safeties are solid. I still think the roster lacks a pure center fielder type free safety. I say this every time I get in front of a microphone. What say you, Lake?
Yeah, they don't have a ball hawk back there. They have hitters. Quan Martin actually, ironically, is a pretty good tackler. They're not cover guys, and I think that in fairness to them,
Or fast.
when you don't get a pass rush, it exposes your deficiencies big time in the back end of the defense. And because those guys don't track balls out the air, because those guys aren't the fastest guys, it shows, when your defensive front isn't wreaking havoc and getting after quarterbacks. It clearly will show. So I think for them, I would like to see both those guys back. I can say that. If you can upgrade the position and not have to do much in doing so, then yeah, you always do that. You always look for upgrades, but I'm not sure if you want to put that on a rookie to get drafted to be your starting free safety at this point right now for a budding Super Bowl team. But what do I know? Because you look up the road in Philadelphia, and Cooper DeJean did the same thing, and
Right. Oh
And
my God.
Mitchell was on the outside, and now you got to deal with them for the next 10, 15 years.
If you pick them right, they can start immediately. And if you got the right guys to put them in place, I think we do got those, man. We need some young juice. Like, we need some young legs at safety in there, and we need some young legs and some speed in there at linebacker. I'm interested to see what Hampton and Jordan McGee look like, because as good as Bobby Wagner is, there needs to be some young legs out there to spell him and on certain downs, because running backs, we don't have linebackers that can run with speed running backs, or like we need
It's
some
those two. It's those two young guys actually. It's Hampton and McGee. Those are the guys, and I know that they like those guys quite a bit. Hampton bulked up and went from a safety. He was a safety in college at Washington. Went from a safety to being a linebacker. But at this point, he wasn't able to crack the lineup just yet. And then McGee, came back from a knee injury and was more of a special teams guy. But at one point in training camp, McGee was already penciled in to be the third starter at linebacker, and then the injury came. So I think they feel good about those two guys, and those are the guys that can run and are more athletic. So it'll be interesting to see how they use them this year.
Hell yeah, man. Appreciate you, Paul. He said A plus content today, fellas. Appreciate y'all. Yeah, I was
Appreciate you.
telling Lake, like Lake was like, hey, we should do this live in the off season, just to make it more interactive. I know people are starving for the content. First time doing it. I like how it's going so far.
Yeah. This is part of the plan, man. We talked about it, and just good conversation, man. Like we always said, you should feel like you're sitting on the couch with us right now. That's how we want to do it. Not scripted, none of that stuff. We didn't go over what we talking about. I don't think we've ever done that.
Ever said what we talking about
But
today?
man, I probably would have said I don't want to do the show, man. I mean, that's just not how we are. It's just off the top and freestyling.
Looking around the division, we know what Philly do, champions. We know how we did. What you think about the Cowboys hiring Schottenheimer?
I mean, I don't want to rain on a man's parade and make and make him out to be a bad guy or nothing like that. I mean, obviously his father was a legend and had a brief time here. But man, if that's not a Jerry Jones move, I don't know what it is. I mean, that's what you came away with as your coach. If that were the case, you should have kept McCarthy. Really. McCarthy had those guys playing for him this year with all those injuries. They still were 7-9, or they 7-10. If yep. So they didn't quit on him, but you basically handed over to your offensive coordinator. That's basically what you did, and that was because, excuse me, you have to keep the Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb thing relevant in the sense that you gave them a lot of money. You can't move on from them with those contracts. So you have to justify it. So you go out and you handpick your own guy, which is Schottenheimer, to be the coach, and it just still leaves the power in those guys' hands. That's just all it is. So is it a good move for Dallas? No. I think long term, I don't think he's the answer for them at coach. I could be wrong, though. I'm sure a lot of Cowboys fans hope we're wrong. But I think history has proven that if Jerry Jones' hands involved in it, it's not going to turn out well.
Yeah, it just feels like a Dallas move. I don't think it's some terrible, oh my God, what are we going to do? If I was a Dallas fan, I wouldn't panic over it. It's what's to be expected. Jerry not going to bring anybody whose star is going to shine brighter than his in Dallas. It's
Simple
Jerry
as that.
for a reason. That's why I was laughing at the idea of Prime coming to Dallas. Jerry not allowing that.
No, not at all. I mean, and I think we knew that Prime wasn't going to do that. I think just out of, out of respect, getting choked up here, out of respect, I think he reached out to Dion. I think it was more of a consulting thing. And oh, by the way, would you be interested in the job? And it was no. So that's when you move on to somebody else. But this is the other thing that people need to understand too. And people aren't really talking about this. I don't think too many people wanted to go to Dallas to be the head coach, knowing that Jerry Jones it's eerily similar to what we saw here for years. You can get paid a lot of money and make the money. I think Rivera was getting like $5 a year. Jay was getting the $5 a year. I mean, Shanahan was getting the $5. It was almost the same deals, 5-year, $25 million deals, and guys didn't finish their contracts.
You get fired. That's a good gig, man.
That's you got broke off, man. And I think that's how people see Dallas. They don't see it as a destination. They see it as as a Titanic in the making. In the waiting. Something bad's going to happen, and that's kind of how I feel about Schottenheimer. There's no way I see him there for 5 years. There's just no way.
Yeah, and did you see the comment that Dak said? I feel like we right there with Philly, and we right there with the best teams in the league.
I mean, I don't. Honestly, Rio, when I see stuff like that, I don't pay much attention to it because as a competitor, what are you supposed to say? We know we're close to Philly; they're going to kill us. No, he can't say that. He has to say what he said, but he probably shouldn't have said anything. I mean, there's times where you can say stuff, and then there's times just shut the hell up, man. And that was a time where he believes that, good for him. But you're not. And if you were, you'd have been in the playoffs. You're further behind Washington right now. So stop.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, he is supposed to say that though. Coming off
as the leader of the team, he has to say that.
And coming off 3 straight 12-win seasons, they finally have a down year. You expect nothing more for a 200 whatever contract, $60 million a year, $90 million cap hit coming up this year. You better be talking like that. You better not be timid at that point. Appreciate you, Tizzy. Does Cup and Luke have the same type of athleticism as far as agility and wiggle? Wondering if Luke can patent his game after Cup if he comes here. The thing is, we haven't seen enough Luke playing wide receiver yet. He's still learning the position. He played quarterback his whole life. He switched just a couple years ago. I don't know if I'm ready to say anything about Luke's game resembles Cooper Cup because Cooper Cup came into this league smoking uh 9 years ago. So I don't know if I'm willing to go there, but Cooper Cup's the type of guy that you can learn a lot from. So if we were to add that guy, while I think he's cooked, he's rinsed, he's a guy, he's a sponge. And what do you know? He could Zach Ertz the situation, come here and get back to it. Because when you're playing with a guy like Jaden Daniels, I mean, he gonna get the football to you.
Yeah, that's a great question by Tizzy. I could see where he's going with that, but again, I agree with you. We just haven't seen enough from Luke yet. We did see him run hard, as a kickoff returner. He put his head down and run, and actually was effective doing it.
Yep.
But as far as the wiggle and things, that's just not his game. He's a north south guy. He's not a guy that's going to shake you and make you miss, and he's not his brother. And even in his brother was just more of north south, just hit the seam, hit the hole, and he was gone at the gap. With Cooper, it's the same thing that keeps worrying me. It's the injuries and the age, and at this point for this team, if you're trying to make sure you get to a Super Bowl, yes, you can get Cooper for 1 year, but I would stay away from that, me myself.
If the cost was something like a 7th-round pick and the money
I'm
gotta
getting
pay
them.
for it. Oh yeah. If we could get him for free, sure. A 7th-round pick and the Rams eating the money, sure.
Yeah.
Bring him here. He is a great person to have in that locker room. I've read something about James Cook apparently trying to force his way out of Buffalo. They not letting him out the door because him and Josh Allen are that entire offense. But definitely need a back like that. I'm not here for trading for running backs, but a back is being drafted with one of our first 3 picks this year. Almost feels like a guarantee.
There's no question about it. I mean, with the 29th pick, that almost has running back written all over it because you don't really want to take him too high. I know Genty's there and he'll probably go in the top 10, but Travion Henderson and guys like that, there's some backs in this year's draft that have speed as well, outside of Travion. So I think that those are things that can happen. Listen, if you're Washington and you don't come away with a back in your top 3 rounds, first 3 rounds, barring you don't use those picks for a Myles Garrett or a Max Crosby, you have to take a running back. And again, I like Brian Robinson, but I think we all can agree that Brian Robinson is a complimentary running back. He's not. I just don't think he's your featured back.
Complimentary back, and that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's not saying he's no good. He's. I think he would be a great 1-2 punch with someone. But as far as a guy that's like a Jahmyr Gibbs type or Saquon type, Derrick Henry type, that back's not on the roster currently.
And we need to be careful thinking that one of those is always just like growing on a tree. Like, oh, but this back like Gibbs, this back's like Saquon. No, it don't work like that.
Nah, bruh.
That type of talent isn't just there because you want it to be.
Yeah. Nah, you gotta have a little bit of luck. It's kind of like with Jaden. You that's the guy you want to draft, and you see all the work habits and the intangibles that you think is going to make him a great quarterback. But then no one understands what's inside their chest. No one understands the work ethic and the preparation that goes into it. And I do know Brian, and Brian's a good dude. Hard-nosed player, cares about his craft. But you just have to look at what you see comparing him wise, and I just don't think he's a featured running back.
No, I don't either, and that's okay. And I like Travion Henderson. I like Dylan Sampson and some of the speed back. Just because they're fast don't make them Jahmyr Gibbs. There's a reason why Jahmyr Gibbs went in the top 16 of the draft. Appreciate you, Rocky D, for the super chat. $5 donations. It's safe to say the halftime was way better than the guy. I don't care what nobody says. Kendrick rocked that shit. And what is my take on Mariota? Would love to have him back. I think somebody might overpay for him to be their Brissett, their bridge to their rookie. What say you, Lee?
I think Marcus is at the point in his life right now, and again, just talking with him in the locker room this year, just the wisdom that he talks with. He's a smart dude, man. One of the smarter dudes you ever come across.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's at the point in his career now where he wants to get a Super Bowl under his belt. He's been in one, but I'm talking about winning it. And I think he's in a good spot here. I think he understands that with Jaden, you're witnessing something special, and to be a bridge player for a franchise like who? I mean, would it be the Giants? Would it be Tennessee? I mean, he came from Tennessee. He's not going back there.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying. Like I think Mariota's on the roster next year for this team. I
I
think
hope so.
yeah, I think they bring him back. And again, like he sees Cliff stayed. There's a reason why some of these guys stayed, and it's because the work environment is so good. It's so conducive for them to be successful and be themselves. And another year of mastering this offense would be a good thing, because I'm gonna throw it out there right now. Why would Mariota go anywhere when he could stay here one more year and be potentially the bridge player for Cliff Kingsbury when Kingsbury takes a coaching job after next year? That would be the more ideal situation, because he could go in and hit the ground running,
Yeah.
knowing that offense and warding off a rookie for a couple weeks, if anything, maybe even half a season.
That's a great point. I didn't even think about that. That is a great point, because this is the last hoorah for Washington's offensive coaching staff and all these
Mhm.
guys, all these cooks in the kitchen for Jaden Daniels. That is a great point. I would love to see Marcus back, because Marcus is a part of that fabric of culture that we built here for this team. Even came in and had to be a hero for us a couple times versus the Panthers and versus the Cowboys to close out the season. So he played his part as well as he could have played it. We're not in a situation where we ever have to worry about quarterback controversy with Marcus Mariota. He seems very content with his
Mhm.
position here. Obviously, as a competitor, if a job opens up somewhere, maybe he would consider it. But I hope we get Marcus Mariota back for sure.
Yeah, I do. I think he's on the roster next year. I think he'll be here. I think again, he sees what's going on here, and he sees that they're uber close to getting to a Super Bowl, uber close to really being able to compete with Philadelphia. And when his number was called this year, he more than held his own. I mean, he lit teams up. He lit the Panthers up. He lit up Dallas, in the couple drives in the last game of the season to win that thing, So I think he's in a good spot, and I think he knows that. And again, if he can just wait one more year and really master what Cliff is doing, he's probably going to end up going with Cliff wherever Cliff goes. And that just makes more sense for him to really revive his career.
Makes a lot of sense. I'm looking at the tight end position. You definitely bring Ertz back because of his chemistry with Jaden and the production he put out this year. What happens behind him is the question for me. My plan, let Bates walk because he's an unrestricted free agent. Ben Sinnott, you are now new John Bates. So you are
Mhm.
blocking tight end extraordinaire. Maybe we throw it to you a couple times over a monthly period. But
You
since we took
draft a tight end.
but since we took him in the second round, do you automatically have to significantly up his role, or do you just accept him for what they've shown you they want him to be and draft another tight end in a very good tight end class?
Yeah, I think they're going to draft a tight end. I think the way things are being done, just from talking in the building, is Senate is a guy that they definitely see long term, being there. But I think being in that second tight end role. So the question now is, you get another year. If you can bring back Ertz for one more year, you get another year of him, and Senate now is your number two tight end as far as the blocking role, like you said. But you're going to draft a tight end who ultimately would be the guy that's replacing Zach Ertz. So I think, the player who they draft in Senate will be your 1 and 2 going forward after next year. And I'm okay with that. I mean, just because you drafted him in the second round, I mean, you're seeing some of the deficiencies that he has. I mean, he did make some plays when his number was called, but for a second round draft pick, he didn't look like a second round draft pick at tight end. He just didn't. But that's something that maybe that they feel like he can grow into, that he can do. I do know that Yankoff, Colton Yankoff, they liked him quite a bit, and then he got hurt. So there's different variables to the offense, but I do think a more athletic playmaking tight end with Jaden would be something dangerous.
Yep. I think if you draft a tight end, you're not looking for a balanced guy. You don't care about his hand being in the dirt. You're looking for a dynamic move tight end. And I think there are a bunch in this class coming out. I'm looking forward to us taking a tight end at some point. But Dejon Bell, appreciate you once again for the $4.99. Do you think the Bears are taking a massive jump this year? At this point, I think we got a rivalry brewing up with them. And Lake, who's your QB1 of this draft? I'll go quickly, then let Lake hit it, and we're going to wrap this one up in a little bit. I think the Bears are definitely going to take a leap. Ben Johnson is going to be phenomenal for Caleb's development. We're going to find out just how much he can lead men. He's got a pretty good staff around him. But yes, I think the Bears look significantly better. And I think Ben Johnson's going to find ways to tap into Caleb's psyche to slow the game down for him, but also speed up his process clock, because that thing was in slow motion last year.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question too. I do think Ben Johnson will be great for Caleb, and it'll make Caleb work in rhythm. It'll make him work within the system of getting the ball out quickly. Caleb has a propensity to hold on to the football, and try to create things that just aren't there. He's still doing it like he did in high school, where he's a National Player of the Year, and he did it in college, where he, won a Heisman Trophy. So those things don't translate to the NFL. One of the things you could just make the comparison between him and Jaden is Jaden has a clock in his head and it's ticking. Either within 2 seconds the ball's out of his hands or he's taking off on you. Exactly. So I think that Ben Johnson will be good for him. As far as a rivalry, I think naturally you could say that, but I just think being in a different division where they're not going to play each other each year unless they were to meet up in the playoffs, I don't really see it as a rivalry. I think Washington's natural rivalry right now is going to be the Eagles because they're in the same division. And as far as my QB1 in this draft, it's Cam Ward. I think whoever's taking a quarterback first in this draft, it should be Cam Ward. I like Shedeur Sanders too. I do, but I just think Cam Ward is a guy that, has that strength that you're going to need at the quarterback position. And I think he has a little bit more wiggle than Shedeur does, but I like Shedeur. I definitely think Shedeur is worthy of being the number one pick, if that were the case. But I just think Cam Ward, man, what I saw with him at Miami this past year, I remember him at Washington State, but at Miami, man, that guy was throwing the ball all over the field.
Mm-hmm. I think Cam Ward's the QB1. So to follow up on that, though, do you think these guys are number one, number two quarterback, like pick in the draft worthy, or this is just the incessant thirst for a quarterback at the position?
I mean, if you're going sheer talent, personally, I don't think this is the best draft in general. Yeah, I think this is going to be a really good draft as far as good professional football players. But as far as just top heavy dogs coming in from day one and just taking over, you probably have 4 or 5 of those dudes. Naturally you have a guy that went to my school, my alma mater, Penn State. I think probably he should be the Abdul Carter. He should be the number one pick in the draft. I truly believe that. But if you look at the Giants who need a quarterback, you got to go Cam Ward. And then if you look at the Raiders who need a quarterback, you got to go Shedeur Sanders. So I think that's how that's going to go. But I think Tennessee's taking Abdul Carter number one.
Ooh, I wouldn't be mad at him. But Rocky D, once again, got a couple more for us, and then we're going to close out after this one. Opinion on possibly being the opener. I want us to be the opening game. I want us to go up there and watch Philly put that Super Bowl banner up and play them to kick off the NFL season. Am I tripping on that, Lake?
No, because I want it too. And only reason why I'm not sure if it will happen is because, the league really values their divisional games late in the season. That's just what they do. But
It'll
but
probably be Detroit
yeah, it probably would be Detroit. But then and again, when you think about it, we've seen Dallas go to New York to start the season.
every
Past
year
several, yeah,
on
past couple
Sunday
of
Night
years,
Football.
exactly. So, I think everybody and their mother wants it to be Washington. I don't think there's even a second guessing on that. So, I'm getting myself ready to be in Philadelphia for week 1.
I'm down with it, bro. I want us to see what it looks like to watch a team put that banner down, all of it. Look how close you were, but you didn't get it done. You were close, but no cigar. Look at these guys. Look at these guys. I want to get the season. I want smoke immediately. I'm not afraid of this schedule we have next year. Opinion on us having the fifth to seventh best odds to win the bowl. I mean, we got a quarterback. We went crazy with an average roster. They expect us to be better next year. Why wouldn't we be fifth to seventh best odds to win it all? You agree?
Yeah, man. I mean, I think it's actually a little low. I think they to me, people think I'm crazy, man. I think they're the second best team in the NFC. I
Ooh.
think after what's going to happen in the draft, and I think exactly what's going to happen in free agency, they're the team that's gunning for Philadelphia legitimately. And I think if you look at the teams in the NFC West with the 49ers, there's a lot of holes they still have to come back from. I know they get Robert Saleh back as defensive coordinator, so they should be better. The Rams, was this the final run in this thing? They're breaking that team up now.
So you got Detroit regressing significantly after these coaches are gone.
I just think the mystique of Detroit is gone. I think they're still going to be a playoff team, a really good football team, but those two coordinators, that's a massive hit for them. And then on top of that, Washington went in there and banged them. So my thing is, there's no mystique with Washington on Detroit. I mean, so the only team that has that mantle hanging over Washington legitimately, I know some Cowboy fans might say, well, we beat Washington. Man, stop. As far as for all the marbles, it's the Eagles. That's the team now. They're a Super Bowl champion, and they're not going away. They're a young football team. That's the team that you have to aspire to beat. And it's going to have to be like that year in and year out now. So to me, I think the league likes it. I think the league likes the fact that the NFC Championship game had two NFC East teams. That's how it used to be. Whoever was the last team standing in the NFC East won the Super Bowl and won it decisively. And that's exactly what we saw, history repeating itself. And then on top of that, the best thing that you can hang your hat on, 22 seasons. There's been a repeat winner of the NFC East. The Eagles won it this year. 22 straight years, be 23 now, tells you that they're not winning the division next year. So you have to ask, if they're not going to win it, who is? Well, it damn sure ain't the Giants. And I venture to say it's probably not going to be the Cowboys. That leaves one team standing, burgundy and gold.
Hey, I love it, man. I love it. And last question, Rocky D had, would I take on Kyle Pitts if it was for a very cheap trade compensation? Because he's not a free agent. I think Cliff could make magic with him, even though Pitts hasn't been what he was drafted to be. I don't think he was in good situations offensively. But for a late day 3 pick, I would like to see what Cliff could do with him, but I'm not really tripping on it. What about you?
No, I mean, if it's a fifth, sixth, maybe a sixth or seventh, yeah, okay, I might take a flyer and see what happens. But I would venture to say that I could probably find somebody else that has a little bit more production for the same quality, the same amount of picks.
Give me Harold Fannin Jr. from Bowling Green, or give me one of these tight ends in the draft.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are going to be there. Ohio State had a really good tight end, and obviously we know Tyler Warren won't be around. He'll be gone early. But there are some tight ends in college football. Notre Dame had a really good tight end. I mean, there's
Taylor's son in LSU.
Absolutely.
Already knows,
Yeah. So they're out there. You just got to do your homework. And the beauty of it is that you feel like you can go to sleep now, put your head on your pillow, and rest assured that Adam Peters is doing his job, and he will get the best talent in the building.
Absolutely, man. Salute to y'all, Reedy and Z podcast. Make sure y'all like, comment, and subscribe to our guys over there. And make sure y'all subscribe to our guy, Lake Lewis Jr., because he's going to be doing things this off season. We're going to keep this thing going on a live basis going forward this off season. Lake, let the folks know where all they can find you.
Sure. You can find me on social media at Lake Lewis Jr. And then, of course, you can subscribe to the podcast, the Lake Lewis Jr. Show. You can subscribe to it and watch it on YouTube. And you can subscribe to it on pretty much all the major audio carriers. Just got picked up this week on Pandora as well. So it's pretty much everywhere. And then, of course, make sure you check out my young dudes over at sportsjourney.com. They're doing a really good job holding that down for us. And then you can see me on ABC. Just posted something up today, for myself and Natalie Spalla from ABC, breaking down the Super Bowl and what Washington needs to do in the offseason to close the gap against the Eagles.
Hell yeah, man. Y'all heard the guy. Make sure y'all check him out. We're going to keep this thing going during the off season. Appreciate y'all for locking in and tuning in with your boy on a Thursday afternoon lunch break type situation. Shout out to the sponsor, Bet US Sportsbook and Casino, home of the fastest payouts in the industry. YouTube 150 is the promo code for those guys. Until next time, Commander Rio, Lake Lewis Jr., we are out. Y'all have a blessed rest of your Thursday afternoon.